Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Everyone who reads it must converse is my channel. Thank you for joining. We are doing a read-through of Ulysses by James Joyce. We are in episode 6. So that's what I'm going to be touching on this video. If you haven't seen the others, they're in a playlist. I'm just going through and touching on and sharing my thoughts on each chapter. We're doing it in a group, so shout out to Roz from Scallydandling Around the Books, Scallydandling About the Books, Mark Nash, his channel is his name, Mark Nash, and then Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics. Those are the booktubers that are doing videos along with this read through. Definitely check them out. They're going to touch on different things. Everybody's going to get something different, and overlap, of course. But there's so much to Ulysses. So if you're here just for chapter 6, well, welcome as well. So chapter 6 is modeled after Hades from the Odyssey. This is the chapter where Odysseus goes down into the underworld. He's sent down into the underworld and meets a bunch of spirits. Actually, comes in contact with the spirit of his own family dead. His mother, I believe. So I had touched on the Odyssey when I was young. Read it in school. It's cool to see these kind of parallels coming out. But how does that translate to Ulysses here? Well, Bloom, our main character, the protagonist in the story, is going to a funeral. The chapter starts off abruptly. They're getting into their funeral carriage, and they're going on their way to the funeral. By they, I mean Martin Cunningham, a gentleman named Mr. Powers, and a gentleman named Simon Dedalus. Now, Simon Dedalus seems to be, the man in charge. He's got the most to say. He's the one that, is kind of, in just the alpha, if it can be said that way. He's the one that is Simon Dedalus is actually Stephen Dedalus's father. Stephen Dedalus is the another main character in Ulysses. The portrait of the artist as a young man is Stephen Dedalus, and James Joyce himself at a young age as a unsure creative is Stephen Dedalus. So we'll see how that plays out. We do actually come in contact with Stephen Dedalus very, very slightly in this chapter. We'll get to there really quick. But there's just, first starts off, they get in the funeral carriage. They're getting ready to go, and you're of course in Bloom's mind. The kind of way that this story is presented to you, you have a couple of different ways that the story is handed over. Some kind of a third person omniscient, where the story is just given to you like a more what we would see this day and age, a more normal way of a storytelling. Most fiction works are third person omniscient, with a narrator, the author, just kind of giving it to you already, kind of knowing everything and giving you the story as they see fit. But this story, you just drop into at seemingly random times, all the time. You drop into Bloom's mind, and you get first person from Bloom's perspective, his thoughts, his takes on the things that he's seeing, and all that kind of thing. Can be confusing for some, I'm sure. So I just wanted to touch on that just to let you know that that's the kind of way that we go. And pretty soon off of the beginning of the chapter. They're in the carriage. They start going, and they're going through the town, in a funeral procession, and they cross the path of Stephen Dedalus. Line 43. There's a friend of yours gone by, Dedalus, he said. There's a friend of yours gone by, Dedalus, he said, and that he is Bloom. We were seeing Bloom look out of the window, and Bloom at gaze saw a lithe young man clad in mourning, a white hat. There's a friend of yours gone by, Dedalus, he said. Who's that? Simon says that. Your son and heir, says Bloom. Where is he? Mr. Dedalus said, stretching over a cross. The carriage, passing the open drains and mounds of ripped up roadway before the tenement houses, lurched around the corner, and, swerving back to the tram track, rolled on noisily with chattering wheels. Mr. Dedalus fell back, saying, Was that Mulligan cad with him? So, there we have just Bloom knows what Stephen looks like, at least. I don't know if Bloom has ever met Stephen and had words with him, but he knows who he is. We know that for sure. Bloom calls out Stephen. Bloom sees him. Bloom calls him out first, and Simon is more than willing to lay eyes on his son as well. We don't know if it's let me see what this little tramp is doing over here, or if it's more of a, oh, my son, wanting to say hey and hey, holler at me or something like that. So, but he definitely doesn't mince any words with how he feels about Buck Mulligan. Buck Mulligan, we get the sense, our own sense, that Buck Mulligan is just a user, just a very uncaring, very selfish kind of person. And there we have some vindication for those thoughts that come up in the first chapter, Telemachus. When we meet Buck Mulligan, we have some vindication for feeling like, Buck is not a real friend to Stephen, that's for sure. Why Stephen is continuing to hang around with him, allow that seeming friendship to keep on, we don't know. They keep on going on. They're talking in the carriage. There's crumbs in the carriage. Somebody has had a little bit of a picnic in the carriage lately. Why do we got this lame carriage? Whatever. And they just kind of go on. They're just talking and touching on different things, and then they pass another person on the side of the road as the carriage goes by. Line 192. How do you do, Mr. Cunningham said, raising his palm to his brow in salute. He doesn't see us, Mr. Powers said. Yes, he does. How do you do? Who? Mr. Dedalus asked. Well, Blazes Boylan, Mr. Powers said. He's there airing his quiff. Just that moment I was thinking. The I, right then, you're getting the dialogue, and then you're in Bloom's head again. So they see Blazes Boylan on the side. Mr. Dedalus bent across to salute. From the door of the red bank, white disk of a straw hat flashed reply. Spruce figure. Passed. Mr. Bloom reviewed the nails of his left hand, then those of his right hand. The nails, yes. So that's about it for the passing of Blazes Boylan on the side of the road. Now, if Blazes Boylan is our protagonist or the antagonist, sorry, of the story, now it struck me because these guys are not mincing any words with how they feel about somebody. Simon Dedalus is more than happy to dig in on somebody and make fun of somebody, or to express how he doesn't like someone and all that. But Mr. Powers, Mr. Cunningham, and Simon Dedalus himself both are all three making an effort to salute this guy, to wave to him, to show him that they acknowledge him, that they see him. And so, you get a sense that he is respected. He is somebody who is respected, maybe looked at as a kind of a successful character, a successful person. So, it just gave me a little food for thought there, just to say, well, Blazes Boylan, if he's our antagonist, well, he's definitely not set up as much of a villain yet. Anyways, there's not much to hate about him yet. I say yet because I don't know, what comes on in this novel. But that's just that. So I thought, that was a kind of a something to keep in mind. And they keep on going on. They're talking about different people, talking about Bloom's wife. How's the concert going on, Bloom? He's expressing himself and how he's busy. But Molly's career is just going well. You hear about the kind of thing. This is a little bit later on. This was something that pointedly showed Bloom and his endurance. Okay, Bloom endures a lot, and he endures a lot continually. And I'll touch on that a little bit longer after just a couple of illustrations here. Line 250. Martin Cunningham nudged Mr. Power. Of the tribe of Reuben, he said, a tall black-bearded figure bent on a stick stumping around the corner of Elvery's elephant house showed them a curved hand open on his spine. On all his pristine beauty, Mr. Powers said. Mr. Dedalus looked after the stumping figure and said mildly, "The devil break the hasp of your back." Mr. Power, collapsing in laughter, shaded his face from the window as the carriage passed Gray's statue. "Well, we've all been there," Martin Cunningham said broadly. His eyes met Mr. Bloom's eyes. He caressed his beard, adding, "Well, nearly all of us." Tribe of Reuben is one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and so a Jew. Calling the guy, the guy that they are acknowledging on the side of the road there, out as a Jew. And, Simon Dedalus saying some little, jab at him just for his own and the guys in the carriage's enjoyment, to just kind of jab at him and laugh, guy stuff, sure. And then, Martin Cunningham says, "Well, we've all been there," meaning, in the pocket of a Jewish guy. And then his eyes met Bloom's eyes, and he caressed his beard, saying, "Well, nearly all of us." Why? Because Bloom is Jewish. Because Bloom is actually on the inside of the kind of thing that they're using to poke fun at, and Bloom just takes it. Doesn't confront that at all, and rightfully so. Why would you? But it just illustrates his endurance. And then another one. Line 310. They're talking about the man whose funeral they are in procession, and the funeral that they are attending. "He's died from a heart attack." "Breakdown," Martin Cunningham said. "Heart." He tapped his chest sadly. "Too much John Barleycorn, cure for a red nose. Drink like the devil till it turns Adalite. A lot of money he spent coloring it." Mr. Powers gazed at the passing houses with rueful apprehension. "He had a sudden death, poor fellow," he said. "The best death," Mr. Bloom said. Their wide open eyes looked at him. "No suffering," he said. "A moment and it's all over, like dying in sleep." No one spoke. Dead side of street this, dull business by day, land agents, temperance hotel, Falconer's Railway Guide, Civil Service College, Gill's, Catholic Club, the Industrious Blind. Why? Some reason. So, Bloom doesn't even get acknowledged in what he's saying. Was what he's saying, off-putting? Maybe. To like some, more traditional sensibilities. Oh, we need to mourn the dead. We need to mourn it, But Bloom has an idea. You get the sense that Bloom actually embraces death as a part of life. Bloom is well acquainted with death in his personal life. His father, we learn in this chapter, his father committed suicide by pills. And we learn more of him losing his son Rudy, which is, you would just think, well, what a blow, But Bloom is an acceptance of death. Bloom accepts death as part of life, and with that, he makes this comment: the best death, the sudden death, the best death that we can hope for. Wide open eyes look at him, and he's trying to clarify himself, just to kind of support what he's saying. No suffering, he said. A moment and it's all over, like dying in sleep. No one spoke. They just stonewall him. And he goes on looking out the window, acknowledging the buildings, acknowledging what he's seeing. So Bloom's endurance is an amazing thing. I love it. Line 340. Well, starting off line 338. The greatest disgrace to have in a family, Mr. Powers added. He's referring to a suicide. The greatest disgrace to have in a family. Temporary insanity, of course, Martin Cunningham said decisively. We must take a charitable view of it. They say a man who does it is a coward, Mr. Dedalus said. It's not for us to judge, Martin Cunningham said. Mr. Bloom, about to speak, closed his lips again. Martin Cunningham's large eyes looking away now. Sympathetic human man he is. Intelligent, like Shakespeare's face. Always a good word to say. They have no mercy on that here, or infanticide. So, there, that's a personal note. That comments, the comment on suicide is very personal for Bloom. Like I said, his dad committed suicide by pills. Does he speak up? Does he say, hey guys, my dad has committed suicide by pills, come off it a little bit, come on, or anything rather. No, and why would he? Bloom is a very mature mind, a very mature being. He understands that people are people, and what they say is he doesn't take it any more personal than it needs to be. But he does acknowledge other people's sympathy. Martin Cunningham is there in effect defending Bloom just in his position on suicide. No judgment. A very Christian point of view, for sure. Temporary insanity, of course, Martin Cunningham says decisively. We must take a charitable view. And then Simon Dedalus pipes in. They say a man who does it is a coward. Well, it's not for us to judge, says Martin Cunningham there. And, through all that, Bloom endures this conversation again. So I see Bloom as a man of endurance. What a strong inner sense of self he has. It's very commendable. Those kind of points definitely came up in this for me. You get a sense that they are kind of in their own world in this chapter, in the carriage and in the cemetery. That Bloom and the others that are on this on this little journey, and the little part of the journey with him, are in their own world, and it alludes to the Odysseus's trip through hell, or through the underworld, which is the afterlife. So with that, at the end there, there's a lot of exploring in Bloom the idea of death. There's a lot of him reveling in the actual life that he has. Life and death dichotomy is big in this chapter, for sure. There's a lot of life and there's a lot of death all around. Now we're going through a lot of death. There's a lot more death pointed out that I could have pointed out, but when it comes down to it, there's just too much to touch on. I'd just be reading the whole whole chapter to you, you know. So near the end, there's something very interesting to me, and I'm waiting to see how it might be bore out in the text. But I want to touch on it just to save it here. This is the end where Bloom is actually just thinking, and we've gone through the funeral. We've gone and the what has been said over the body has been said, and Bloom is going towards the gate and leaving out, and he's just thinking. Last time I was here was Miss Sinico's funeral. Poor Papa too. The love that kills. And even scraping up the earth at night with a lantern like that case I read of to get at fresh buried females, or even putrefied with running grave sores. This is, now I'm at line 11, or line 1000. Give you the creeps after a bit. I will appear to you after your death. You will see my ghost after death. My ghost will haunt you after death. There is another world after death named Hell. I do not like that other world, she wrote. No more do I. Plenty to see and hear and feel yet. Feel live warm beings near you. Let them sleep in their maggoty beds. They are not going to get me this innings. Warm beds, warm, full-blooded life. So, Bloom is a character who endures, for sure. He's that kind of, you're not going to get me this innings, talking directly at death, saying my time has not yet come. And what was the most interesting in that little part, you get him thinking about death, and then to get him embracing life at that point is right there in the middle. What hinges that the death, reflections on death, and then the embracing of life. What is right there in the middle is, I do not like that other world, she wrote. No more do I. So, I do not like that other world, she wrote. That is from the letter that he has received from Martha Clifford. So, world, I do not like that other world. That's a typo or a mistake in word in that letter. Yet, Bloom is using it just as it is. Not thinking through it and using what was meant to be said, but using exactly what came into his experience, and definitely taking it very deep in his reflection on life and death. There's something to that. That is a practice of taking the outer experience, things that come to you in your outer life, and taking them just as deep as you can in your inner life, as your own thoughts. Just as deep as anything else in your inner life, just coming right out. So, Bloom is a character that definitely is not just lovable, to me. I mean, I love getting into his thoughts and feelings like that, but he's so enduring, and what are we here to do in life if not endure? So this world is a world of endurance. We will suffer this world, and I don't mean suffer to mean only a negative hardship, though it is that too, but suffer in the sense of endure. We're here to endure. We allow ourselves uh, to move on, move through life, and how we do that is our own choice. Bloom makes what I see as the right choice to not hold people, in and feel like making them pay for wrong ideas that they might have or things like that. He allows people to be who they are. He allows people to think the way that they think. Live and let live. And he is living. And so, in that, Bloom is a very solitary figure, even though he's around others the whole time. In this chapter, he's obviously not, uh, not in their inner circle. He endures a lot in this chapter, and I just thought it great. Very, very cool chapter. At the end, Bloom is leaving the funeral, leaving the cemetery, back to the city, back to the world. And so there we're going to pick up, I assume we're going to pick up somewhere around there with Bloom in chapter 7. So thank you for joining me, guys. Hope you enjoyed this, and enjoy reading along with Ulysses. Ulysses 2020, guys. Thank you, BookTube, and catch you on the next one. Bye.